Time now for Back Pages tonight here on Sky Sports News, bringing you a first look at the sports stories in the morning's newspapers. And joining us are Jonathan Liew, sports writer at The Guardian, and Sam Wallace, chief football writer for The Telegraph. Evening to you, chaps. We'll speak to you very, very shortly. Let's just run you through the back pages as we have them. Well, Manchester United's second game under Ruben Amorim is the lead on the back page of the Eye newspaper. Rasmus Hojlund pictured celebrating one of his 2 goals. They also report, by the way, on Igor Swiatek's 1-month doping ban. The Mail also covers United's win over Bodo Glimt in the Europa League. They carry a story about fans of both Merseyside clubs gathering together on Sunday to protest against rising ticket prices. Let's go to the inside pages of The Telegraph, which focus on Chelsea's win over Heidenheim with Christopher Nkunku in the spotlight. Also, news of Reece James being out until the new year now. And at the bottom of the page, a piece on Frank Lampard's return to management with Coventry City. The same paper focuses in on Tottenham's late setback. It's all pegged back to a 2-2 draw against Roma. Plenty to go out there. So welcome once again to Jonathan and to Sam. Where shall we start? The Eye, I think, and Manchester United and their 3-2 win over Bodo Glimt. So this was Ruben Amorim's home debut, and he was rescued by Rasmus Hojlund. Sam, let's just sort of start at the start, if you like. What did you make of the lineup that was picked by Ruben Amorim for this game?
Well, I think with hindsight, they've won the game, and it looks it looks like it's got some legs in it. Obviously, there are players in that team that have struggled in their United careers, players like Anthony and Mason Mount. But this is a manager who's, although he said he's not completely committed to one style, he plays this 3-4-3 system, so he needs players who can operate as those wing backs. And he's clearly. No one is pretending this is easy. He's taken over Manchester United midway through a very difficult season. Clearly, they're under a new sort of majority influence ownership, and the squad is a mishmash of the many different managers and sort of recruitment experts they've had in the past. So it's not a simple task. I think that there will be certain things they'll be looking for, and one of them is to get a tune out of Hojlund. He's clearly a talented boy. I mean, that first goal was beautifully taken. And those are the small, if you like, wins that Amorim can chalk up. I think all in all, though, whether you're playing Bodo Glimt or Liverpool, your first home game as Manchester United manager, you really want to win it. And he's done that. And I know it was a bit tight at the end, but I think that's the basic requirement. And he did that. And what he did happen in the future will be difficult. I'm sure very few of this squad, if Amorim is successful, will last the distance. But they're the squad he's got at the moment, and he's got to make the best of them.
Yeah, I mean, you're right. A win is a win. Hairy at times, but entertaining. But now 2 wins in a row in the Europa League for Manchester United after those 3 opening draws. Jonathan, I just wonder, we mentioned Rasmus Hojlund there, but who else do you think would have done their chances of succeeding under Ruben Amorim some good tonight, and can you sort of see figuring in the system that he wants to employ?
Yeah, I mean, I think when you look at players that impressed, I think Mazraoui had a pretty good game. I thought Mason Mount looked really sharp, and he seems to be one of those players that Amorim definitely wants to take a closer look at. Also, it was an interesting one because obviously they went into the lead, they fell behind, and Amorim then basically changed it straight away. He brought on Diogo Dalot. Sort of he kind of shifted things around at halftime, which seemed to confuse the TNT Sport commentators a little bit. But he wasn't afraid to kind of make changes. So he took off Malacia, who I think he was culpable for one of the Bodo Glimt goals, but also isn't quite at full physical capacity yet. So he brought on Dalot, and Garnacho then played wider, and Dalot tucked in. I think that those are the sort of, and the other one I want to mention is Bruno Fernandes, because I think a lot of people were wondering where Fernandes is going to fit in to this system. whether he plays as one of the two number 10s, whether he needs to almost be surrounded by mobile runners to carry his, slightly declining mobility as he goes into his 30s. But I thought he had a really good game as well. I think, certainly in these early stages of Amorim's tenure, he's going to need leaders in the dressing room who can basically set standards. And Fernandes is one of those players, even though he's essentially one of the sixes, one of the two midfield players. I thought he had a pretty decent game, and he showed that he still has plenty to offer.
Just having a look at Manchester United's fixtures coming up. So it's Everton on Sunday, and then it is Arsenal next week at the Emirates Stadium. I just sort of wonder, what is Ruben Amorim, do you think, Sam, picking up? What do you think his main learnings have been so far from what he's seen, the 1-1 draw at Ipswich, the 3-2 win this evening, that will hopefully, as far as Manchester United fans are concerned, stand him in good stead for that real test when it comes to taking on Mikel Arteta's side?
Well, I assume it's seeing these players close up and kind of assessing what they're capable of and just what their appetite for this challenge is. I mean, I'm sure he did a lot of preparation during the international break, watching recent games and going over the data and so on. But nothing beats sort of being up close with them. I think one of his challenge against Arsenal is how he plays. He's obviously a very front foot manager, and he likes to attack. And he's played for a sport. He's coached a Sporting Lisbon team that's won league titles, so he's used to being in charge of games. The adaptation he's going to have to make, at least for the time being, and maybe for some time really, is getting used to more successful teams having more of the ball than his side. And I think that's going to be quite difficult. I don't think this early in his career, unless he really surprises us at Manchester United, they can expect to dominate Arsenal. But it'll be Arsenal on the ball, and that will be the case against quite a few other sides in the Premier League. So it'll be interesting to see how he sets up, because clearly he wants to impose this philosophy. But against certain teams, that's going to be very, very difficult to play that way.
OK, so United will be playing at Arsenal in a couple of games' time. Cross North London, Spurs pegged back with Matt Hummels equalising late on for Roma, 2-2 in the Europa League. Jonathan Liew, your thoughts?
Yeah, I mean, I'd like to say this was a shock, but I mean, it wasn't really. I think I was switching between the United and Spurs games tonight, and I watched most of the second half of Spurs against Roma, and I thought actually they weathered a little spell of Roma pressure at the start of the second half quite well. They looked to be seeing it through, and then you just get one of those defensive episodes. I don't know what you call it, kind of a brain fade or just a total loss of composure, which I think I'm afraid to say we've seen way too often under Ange Postecoglou at Spurs. We know how his teams like to defend. We know what the doctrine is, which is essentially don't let the opposition get anywhere near your penalty area. Push high, be really aggressive. Defend as a team. Compact the space in the opposition half. But there are inevitably going to be times when you have to defend your own lines, where you have to defend your own area. And I don't think, even if you go back and look at his Celtic sides or the Australian national teams that he coached, I don't see a huge amount of evidence that he is equipping his players with the solutions to defend the last line that sort of backs the wall, defending against crosses, the really sort of ugly, dirty work of defending that ultimately wins you trophies. Because what you find is that when a cross comes into the Spurs box, when it's a set piece, there is a kind of a panic there. All they really know is to just attack the ball and be aggressive. But there are times when you just have to defend your lines. You just have to get there, to be organised, to be compact, to know where everyone else is going to be, to be organised, to have the spacing right. And I'm just not entirely sure that this Spurs side knows how to do that, simply because of the way they've been coached and the ethos they've been instilled with. But it is going to cost them. It cost them here. It's cost them many times this season. And when it comes to a big final, there are just times when you have to spend 20 minutes just defending your lines, because Spurs aren't good enough. They don't have the talent to be the sort of team that dominates everyone for 90 minutes. They're not Manchester City. There are going to be times when they just have to clear set pieces and clear crosses and stop crosses. And I don't see for all the incredible qualities of this team, for all the incredible ceiling that we saw at City at the weekend, I don't see a huge amount of evidence that Postecoglou knows how to do that yet.
Yeah, let me just come back to you on this, Jonathan, because, you just look at the results that they've had recently. Beating Villa 4-1, then the defeat to Galatasaray in the Europa League, the defeat at home to Ipswich Town in the Premier League, then that big win at the Etihad, and ultimately then now we had a 2-2 draw against Roma. But I wonder, there will be some rotation. You now got Guillermo Vicario out and Fraser Forster having to deputise, and Radi Dragusin hasn't played many minutes. Can Ange Postecoglou, suggest maybe that is one of the reasons why there is this inconsistency, or would it not matter who's on the pitch because the ethos that lies behind it is, what it is as you've described?
Yeah, I mean, in a lot of games this season, Vicario has bailed them out. Fraser Forster almost bailed them out. The Roma equaliser basically comes from an incredible save by Forster in the 90th minute. The players have stood up. Dragusin and Davis were incredible at Manchester City at the weekend. So there are the individual players are not failing him, and this is not going to happen every game. It's not even going to happen, for whole periods of a game. It's just that in certain moments, it does seem like Spurs don't really know what to do when crosses are swinging into their box, when they're under a bit of pressure. It's almost as if they've been told, just be aggressive, just have character. And I think at the very, very, very elite level of the game, a level that Postecoglou's not really spent a lot of time at, you just need a little bit more than just, want it a bit more. And I'm not sure whether he's got that extra 1%.
Sam, I wonder, given not just what we've seen tonight, I think it's dangerous just to judge on one game, right? But, we've seen a pattern with Spurs. Do you think they have what it takes and the consistency needed to do what Ange Postecoglou does in his second season, which is win a trophy, which is what they are desperate for? And I guess right now it would appear the League Cup and that quarter-final against Manchester United before Christmas is the best chance.
Yeah, I think it was bold to say that when he said that he always wins a trophy in his second season. I mean, Tottenham have this rare capacity not to win trophies, certainly this century. They don't seem to be able to pick them up as other big clubs do, even when they're not having a good league season, in the way that Arsenal, United have picked up FA Cups when they've been playing poorly in the league. So I do believe that is something about the culture of the club that is very, very hard to change. If you look at Hugo Lloris's recent autobiography, which was serialised in Jonathan's paper, I think there were some really interesting points he made. I mean, he was their captain, and he's a World Cup winner, and he said, I don't think this club wants to win trophies. And I know that's a very different sort of argument to the particulars that Jonathan's getting into there about defending. So when you ask that question, are they ready to win it? It's a huge change that Postecoglou is trying to bring about. And I was at that City game, as was Jonathan, and they were magnificent in that. I mean, they really deserved to win that. And I thought he got it spot on in terms of the way that they went at City. And yes, Dragusin and Davis, not the first choice centre-halves by any stretch of the imagination, were excellent. So I do feel there is something there, and obviously Pochettino got them close. And Postecoglou appears to be a real absolutist. It's his way, and he's going to do it this way, and there is no other way. I do quite like that. I mean, I'd always prefer a manager who's prepared to sort of perish for his own mistakes rather than trying to make the ones that other people want him to make. So I'm intrigued. Their results are completely volatile, and this kind of feels like it was in keeping. But as you say, to get back to your point, the League Cup really does feel like a good opportunity for them. With City out, they eliminated City, and that feels like they've got a chance.
Yep. Thursday, the 19th of December for that game, Tottenham against Manchester United in the Carabao Cup quarter-finals. All right, gents, thank you for the moment. We're going to take a quick break, and when we come back, we'll look at more of the back pages, including this in Jonathan's paper, The Guardian, where there's a report of injury concerns at the back for Liverpool ahead of their huge Super Sunday game at home to Manchester City. You're watching Back Pages tonight. Welcome back to you at home. Welcome back to Jonathan Liew, sports writer for The Guardian, and Sam Wallace, chief football writer for The Telegraph. Right then, we're going to look at the back of The Guardian and Jonathan's paper reporting on Liverpool and Arne Slot. And worth, saying here, obviously, brilliant start to the season for Slot. But now we're getting into that part of the season as we approach Christmas where other factors start to affect things like the availability of players, and particularly Ibrahima Konate, Conor Bradley may not be fit for the game against Manchester City on Sunday. How does that potentially affect things, Jonathan?
Well, Bradley, I guess, not so much as great as he was against Real Madrid. I think there is the talk is that Trent Alexander-Arnold will be back for that game, so I guess that's a fairly simple like for like. Konate is a slightly more serious miss if he is absent, because people at the club have been really talking about him as a huge one of those hugely improved players this season, a real leader, somebody who's I think spent the last 2 or 3 seasons almost learning at the elbow of Virgil van Dijk. Obviously he's his own player, he's got his own skill set, but what he's learned from Van Dijk and what he's taken from him, in the same way that Piqué learned from Puyol or Rafa Varane learned from Pepe and Real Madrid and Sergio Ramos. That sort of development and it felt like. It feels like one of those breakthrough seasons for him. So he is a big miss. And you coincide that with the fact that City are now in a place where they're getting a few of their star names back. De Bruyne's back. Diaz, I think, was on the bench against Feyenoord. He didn't come on, but he might well be fit for Sunday. Stones might come back. Grealish is on. They might well get him back. And so you have City bringing back players, and Liverpool, potentially losing a key player, and that might be the type of thing that makes a big difference in a tight game.
Sam, obviously City in this funk. 5 defeats on the bounce, and then letting a 3-goal lead slip against Feyenoord in the Champions League. Best time to play them, or worst time to play them? In the Sun, Slot fears a Pep plot and producing some sort of masterclass out of nowhere, or are his problems simply too deep that even with his tactical acumen, he just can't get a result at Anfield?
Look, in terms of the bookmakers, Liverpool on form are completely the favourites, and historically, even going back to before the Abu Dhabi era, City always had a really bad record at Anfield. So they have been the two leading teams of recent years, notwithstanding Arsenal's recent kind of resurgence. And yes, you'd have to say that, especially at Anfield, they look like it's hard to see past Liverpool. In terms of City, I don't believe this obviously isn't going to go on forever. At some point, he's going to steady the ship. But it just really depends of where they are when that happens. And 11 points is vast, really, in terms of the tightness of the league title race as it has been between those two clubs at different times over recent years. It's come down to goal difference before. So these are. This is a crucial game for City, and I don't think it's an exaggeration, although we are often accused of hyperbole, that they really have to go. They have to try and stop Liverpool winning at the very least to stay within range of them. In terms of Slot, he doesn't really have to say too much at the moment. The team is so good. He's a pretty composed press conference performer. He doesn't try and project anything that he's not. He's got a dry sense of humour. He's quite warm, but he doesn't try and do he doesn't what I would sort of describe as the big sort of set piece moments, the ones that Guardiola and Klopp and Mourinho have done over the years. He certainly knows his strengths in that regard. And I suppose calling it on with Guardiola at the moment, he just doesn't need to do it. The problems are deep-seated enough at City, so it seems in the last 6 games that there doesn't have to be any provocation. Clearly, the pressure is all on Guardiola at the moment, and it's hard to see past a Liverpool win. But it has been quite. This is one of the strengths of the league. It's very hard to call, and one imagines that Guardiola has a plan. it'd be interesting to see who has more of the ball again, because these are styles that, you know, they both want it. They certainly both want the ball, and only it'll be intriguing to see how those two match up against each other.
Let's pick up the pace. We're starting to run out of time here, gents. Talk about Chelsea, 2-0 winners against Heidenheim in the Conference League, so they're still absolutely perfect, secured a playoff place at least. Jonathan, Christopher Nkunku, and worth, according to Sam Dean's piece, more than the entire squads of 30 of the other 35 teams who are taking part in this competition. I mean, these are going to be mismatches for a while for Chelsea, aren't they?
Yeah, and you know, I think this result qualifies them for the next stage at the very least. That was never really going to be in doubt. You know, Chelsea massively outpower pretty much every other team in the competition. You know, the question I'd raise about a striker like Nkunku, he was a hero at Leipzig. He was like a £60 million player, bought with great fanfare. How long is he going to be content? He's scoring goals in the Europa Conference League. He's barely played for Chelsea in the Premier League. Is there a path to first team league football for him, or is he just going to spend his season, you know, scoring goals against the Sound of Music FC? I think that's the main point of jeopardy. Whether players like Mudryk and Badiashile and Nkunku think, well, hang on, this is all very well, but where's our progression?
Desperately trying to think of a pun to do the Sound of Music. No, can't find it. OK, let's move on to Reece James. Sam, how much do you fear for him now that, you know, as we hear in the Telegraph, he's set to be out until the new year with his latest injury?
Yeah, it's desperately sad news for him. I mean, there's a pretty jarring statistic in that piece that by Matt Law, that he's missed 55 games through injury in the last 15 months. That's the period in which he's been Chelsea captain. So it must be really, really frustrating for him. And clearly he's a very important part of Chelsea, in as much as he's one of the few academy players they haven't sold. So they put a lot of faith in him. Giving him the captaincy was a step, and they desperately want him to be a success. But as all injured players know, that you can become rather invisible to a manager when you're not fit, and that is the great challenge for him, is keeping that fitness and keeping it consistently. And he's still a very, very young man, so I have great sympathy for him, but football is a brutal business, and it moves on quickly.
Yeah, it absolutely is. About a minute left to talk about Frank Lampard, who's back in management with Coventry. He says he wants to prove people wrong and excite fans. Jonathan, what's the most striking thing about this appointment for you?
Well, it's his fourth job, unless you count that kind of babysitting spell at Chelsea second time round, and he hasn't really had a. You know, he was complaining about English managers not getting a fair press. You know, and he's done all right at Derby. He's done all right at Chelsea. He kept Everton up, which I think puts him in exalted company of every Everton manager in the last 70 years. And he's got a fourth job. A lot of managers don't get a fourth job. And the fact that he's taken over from Mark Robbins, who, you know, incredibly well loved at Coventry, I think a lot of fans are still mourning him. This is his last chance. And I think if he's going to get a bit of time to get it right. I think he's going to get a little bit of patience, but he's not going to get a lot.
No, he probably won't. 17th in the table, 2 points clear of the drop zone, and it is Cardiff City at home in his first game in just a couple of days' time. Gents, we have run out of time, I'm afraid, but thank you very much indeed for your company, for your insights this evening. Thank you, Jonathan. Thank you, Sam.